Hey everyone, if you've never been to Moonlight before, my name is Josh, and what Moonlight is a place for 42 students to come and collaborate on their ideas. So whether you have a side project, a business, open source tool, a game, whatever it is, Moonlight's a place for you to get supportive feedback and share it with the community. So normally Moonlight is split into two halves. The first half is kind of an open mic. Anyone can talk about their idea, get some feedback. You have 5 minutes. The second half is a demo, where you have 10 to 15 minutes to give a demo and present it to the community, more of a finished product. You can use a projector and everything for that. And so, but tonight is a little different. We have 2 demos tonight. So the first one is Taylor. He built a Slackbot game. It's like kind of a Hitman style game. And so he's going to go ahead and demo that for us real quick. Ready, Taylor? Yep, we have 2.
Hey guys, we're gonna hope this works because the Wi-Fi's been kind of spotty, but try to do some live deploys, what have you. So my project I named FT Hitman because everything at 42 seems to begin with FT, so I figured why not. And it is approximately 3,600 actual code lines and not white space of buzzword heavy code because I try to jam every new technology into it possible, because also why not? So first off, I started with a microservice architecture because that's new and the rage and what have you. The benefits of a microservice architecture: you've got separation of concerns, just trying to make it full screen. So the benefits of a microservice architecture: you can split your various, the concerns of your program into specific services instead of trying to like shove them all into a monolith. It makes it a little bit easier to maintain. You can choose the best architecture for like the problem your microservice is trying to solve for the, each individual service. You can use like any programming language you want as long as they speak normally HTTP. So that's super handy. You have smaller code bases for each of the services. So that's like less bugs, just like less mental overhead, if you will. Makes it a little bit easier to write complex projects. And all the smaller code base also makes for easier testing. And because you're deploying microservices independently of each other, you can update like one particular section without having to, do code reviews or like build a release for a giant program. You're just working with like the smaller pieces. So the drawbacks of the architecture I went with: it's super complex. I mean, most of what we write at 42 is a single binary, and that's really easy to deploy. You just like copy it and you're off to the races. But with microservices, it's a little bit more complex, such as everything has to expose an API. I went with RESTful JSON API for this project because that's what I'm used to. But everything has to be able to talk to everything else. Even if it's just a single endpoint, eventually it's going to need like to receive some information somewhere else or events or what have you. Monitoring, just because you have to monitor like, this isn't working. Got to monitor more than one like program. Same thing with logging, especially if I use Docker. Everything, like all the logs are separate. It's just a real pain to try to get those into one stream so you can see what's actually happening with your program. And deployment. You've got to deploy however many microservices you have instead of just one. All right. So the breakdown of my services, we have the authentication service. This connects to the Slack or the intra OAuth endpoint, so you can like log in using your intra UID and password. And yeah, it implements all of my crypto, so the actual bot service doesn't have to worry about whether a user is real or not. It can just query the authentication service, and it knows it is. And it pulls the information from intra. Like at this point in time, it's just your UID, but use your log times, do some like cool heat map stuff if I really wanted to. The second service is the Slack Firehose. It connects to Slack with a real-time API with using a WebSocket. It receives push events. These are just like JSON dictionaries with a couple of different fields pre-filled. It filters the events. Slack is really chatty. Every time anybody on the entire Slack starts typing, you'll get a user typing event, which is just a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. So I have to filter all of these out because it would require way too much processing power for the bot to have to do it itself. So I just drop them right there. It adds a little bit of info to an event, like the Slack doesn't tell you whether it's a private message or not, because on their side, everything is just channels anyway. So it queries and adds a field if it's a private channel. So if it's, say, a command, I don't have to look it up later to make sure it's a command that can, say, only be used in a private, like a DM with the bot. It pushes all the events after it's filtered them and what have you using 0MQ with a publish or a pub sub message system. It's publish and subscribe, for those you don't know what it is. Basically, you publish on many topics, and as many people as you like can subscribe to those topics. The downside of this, none of the events are actually cached. If I don't read them off the file descriptor immediately, they're just like, fade away into the ether. Now, this really hasn't been a problem yet, but if, traffic picked up, I could actually miss some commands, which would probably take the users off a little bit. But the upside is I could run multiple instances of my bot in parallel, and they'd all be able to read the events and react to them. And hopefully that would allow me to scale horizontally at least. So my third service is Gygax, which is named after the guy that created D&D. It's the actual bot. It subscribes to the events from the Firehose. It's based on an event loop architecture. Basically, I read the events off the Slack or the message queue and stick them into a queue and process them one at a time using like a handler kind of thing. Each of the events, like I have two basic primitives. I have events. It's the first one. It's an immutable info container. Because it's in Python, it's just a class, some basic data with like an internal dictionary, and then some syntactic sugar to make those dictionary objects easily available. Each event has a major type, so that's like, say, a command, or if I'm sending a message, it'd be a message type, something like that, and a specific subtype that uniquely identifies every event. And I have actions, which are stateless event handlers. All they do is they receive an event on one side and do whatever they want to do with the event. They can either push events onto the queue. Say if they need to send a message, they could push a send message event onto the queue. And they can interact with the database, or in the case of the message ones, actually call the Slack API. So the tech, it's all written in Python 3.6. I started out having to use 2.7 a little bit, but I was eventually able to move it all to 3.6, which was nice. To just like some notable dependencies for you guys that may be interested in this. On the authentication side, I use Flask, which is super nice if you haven't used it. The Flask OAuth plugin makes the OAuth stuff super easy. I'm talking like a single function call to get like all the 42 integration together. So that was real nice. And then Flask SQL Alchemy like helps with the database side of it, makes it easier. I use requests, which if you haven't used, you need to go use it right now. It is the best, in my opinion, library for an HTTP client in Python. It's super intuitive, it's lightweight, and it's got great documentation, which really makes it pull together. It's run on GUnicorn, which is I believe it's a pure Python implementation, but it's a embedded web server. So I don't have to serve it with like Nginx or something like that. I can just serve it with GUnicorn. I'm using the eventlet worker type, which handles like asynchronous events pretty well for low traffic stuff. It's not, The Firehose, I also use requests. Actually, I use them in all of it. I use the WebSocket client library, which is super nice, and zero MQ bindings with Gygax requests, SQ Alchemy, and the excellent PyTZ, which handles time zone conversions. In my bot, I have stuff like you get new assignments at 11:42 every night. I needed to be able to schedule assignments at 11:42, but I didn't want to have to. My server runs in UTC, and I didn't want to have to convert, like in my config files, local time to UTC. So I use the Python TZ library to use it. So I have 5 more minutes. For deployment-wise, use GitHub for my version control, Docker to deploy the app on, Travis CI to do my continuous integration and continuous deployment, Let's Encrypt to get my HTTPS certificates, AWS to run it on, and I use Sentry.io for error monitoring. It hooks very nicely into Python and I believe a whole bunch of other languages, and it's also included in the GitHub developer student pack that we all have, so it's very nice. So my CI/CD pipeline, I push a build to GitHub, just like a regular commit, which triggers a webhook in Travis CI, which kicks off a build, and it builds a Docker container in the thing. I also run some tests, but it's mainly just to build a Docker container and push it to the Docker Hub, which is like a free image hosting. After the build is over, and if it's successful, it calls a SSH script on my VPS, which actually pulls the new Docker images, deploys it to the server, and then shuts down the old one. It'll also do automatic rollback in case the new image throws an exception on startup. It will just roll back to the previously known good configuration, which is nice. That's actually all I have on the slideshow. Hacks. Why doesn't escape let you exit full screen? All right, so I thought about demoing my actual bot, but it's a game. It's running. You guys can go play it and demo it for yourselves. So instead, I'm going to show off a little bit of my continuous integration because it's something I haven't heard anybody else talk about here, and I think it's interesting. So give me a moment, see if I can get the SSH working. How can you play the game? If you would like to play, you can send a direct message to iMontoya. That's I-M-O-N-T-O. Crap, I can't even remember how to spell it. iMontoya. It's named after the guy from The Princess Bride, so Google it. You can send him that message, !register, and it will begin your registration. Keep in mind that it will ask you for a weapon and a location. The weapon should be someplace everybody can get to. That is not the bathroom, as somebody thought. And the weapon needs to be something everybody can get a hold of. So no Lamborghinis or unicorns, please. And it needs to be portable, so a chair is not really going to work either. Why? He's not responding. Really? I have not since fingers now. Yes.
You want to demo it? I have Slack open. Is it private method? Is it a bot?
You actually have a thing.
Yeah, just go to.
Yeah.
Connect to iPhone. That's 8.8.
You're about to get registered, Josh.
Hopefully. No choice.
If he responds. I'm checking the logs to see what's wrong.
If it doesn't work, you can just kind of explain the idea of what it should respond and like how it play.
So, I don't know what's wrong. I have to look. So you give them a weapon and a location using the set command. There's actually not any documentation right now because I've been super busy. But at 11:42, after enough people join the play, the lower bound I believe is set on 6 people a game right now because I was having trouble getting enough for the alpha test. But it kicks off a game, and at 11:42, everybody in the game will be randomly assigned another person's UID, a weapon, and a location, and they will have to kill the person by touching them with the weapon at the location. And then they use the report command to report it in to the bot. And try to cut down on cheating. The bot sends a confirmation message to your intended target, and they have to confirm or deny it. Right now, the deny workflows kind of muddy, not really sure what to do there. So don't lie. If your hit is confirmed, you just like get stuck in a waiting game, and the next 11:42 p.m. you'll be assigned another target. And the idea is to work all the way down until there's one hitman left standing, and there, of course, are the winner. So that's pretty much all I have since the Wi-Fi is working and the bot's apparently down. So anybody have any questions? Nope. Do you have a question?
Challenges you faced in working with Slack API.
Just ask about what the challenges I faced while working with the Slack API.
Yes.
One thing, the SDK provided by Slack is terrible. It does what it's supposed to do, but it does it in a very resource inefficient way. It was taking up all the processing power on my VPS. I had to go back and rewrite my own to get it a little more manageable. They use a busy loop, if you know what that is, which is just like terrible. Secondly, their API technically takes JSON data, but they don't want it as a JSON blob. They want it URL encoded, which is kind of weird. In fact, one of the parameters, you have to dump JSON to a string and then URL encode the string and pass it that way. So their API is a tad bit of a mess. Be aware of that.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and on the Moonlight, if I don't have the website finished by then, on the Moonlight Slack channel, when the bot responds, I'll post some screenshots of how it works so everyone can use it. So the next demo we have set up is the 42 Chef AI. If y'all don't know about their story, it's really cool. They participated in a VentureBeat AI hackathon about 3 weeks ago, and actually were chosen, out of the 242 teams were chosen in the top 3 and got to bring their project to the VentureBeat AI conference, I believe. It was a huge conference. They got a lot of MobileBeat, a huge conference, a lot of great experience. So we have both projects demoing here. Tonight it's 42 Chef AI, and we can go ahead and get started. You ready? Awesome.
Sweet. All right. Thank you, Josh. So my name is Michael. This is Renee. This is Akia, and this is Chef AI. So our project is a smart voice application that improves your cooking experience. So the initial problem we set out to work on was you're cooking and you're following along with a new recipe, and your hands get dirty, like dough, oil, some sort of thing like that, and you have to either waste time washing your hands or you have to just risk getting your device dirty. So that was a pain point that we wanted to solve, and so our initial solution was the voice application that would, based on your voice commands, go through the recipe with you. So you can go forwards, backwards, ask for specific amounts of like sugar, or ask for like how the given action is supposed to look like. And so it's supposed to just be a hands-free experience via your phone, Google Home, or tablet. So while working with the framework, we used API.ai. We realized that we could take it a step further, right? So why not just try to work with smart appliances, right? So smart fridges, smart coffee makers, smart stoves, these are becoming more and more commonplace. So we wanted to see if we can integrate our voice application to these smart devices. So imagine you're waking up in the morning and you're being greeted by your application, like, good morning, would you like to get breakfast started? And you say, yeah, sure. And it says, well, you have enough in the fridge to make clouds on egg. So you confirm that you want to make that recipe, it gets the oven started for you, and then it gets the coffee maker going, right? So before you even leave your bed, your kitchen's already going. So, you know, you go into the kitchen and you got the coffee going, so you got that ready, and all you have to do is crack the eggs open and get things ready and throw it in the oven, and you're good to go. So that's kind of the idea with the voice application system. We want to make the cooking experience that much more better, more seamless. So that's kind of the direction we wanted to go in. Other features that we wanted to include with the smart appliances would be like inventory systems, right? So it can track when your eggs are running low, and it'll compile a shopping list for you, right? You can view that shopping list at any point, and then you can tell it to place an order. For example, you're going to work and you want to have rice and chicken delivered to your doorstep. So you just tell it to place the order, and by the time you come home, Instacart or Amazon Fresh will have your food delivered to you. So that's the concept. In terms of market, we thought this was a viable product because there are meal kit services that we could partner with. There's, like I said, Instacart or Amazon Fresh that we can also partner with. And just to give you an idea, like cookbook industries, revenues of $4 billion a year, meal kit 3 to 5 a year, and then like Google Homes and Alexas are growing more and more popular year by year. So that's that. We're going to move into the demo. So Renee here is going to demo the application. It is a voice application, so I'll get the microphone close, and then you can listen in.
Yeah, for this demo, just make sure, I'll just letting you guys know, there might be a couple things that it might pick up, so I'll try to keep quiet, and like you guys could do the same so it doesn't pick any extra sound up. Talk to Chef Marvin. Exit.
His phone was on mute, sorry.
Talk to Chef Marvin.
All right, getting the test version of Chef Marvin.
Hello, Renee. How can I help?
What can you do?
Your options include asking for a specific recipe, check your fridge status, viewing your favorites, or checking on your shopping list.
Yeah, so there's I guess a help interface, you can call it. So if you're not sure of what the assistant can do, it'll tell you, here are your options, and we'll be implementing more features afterwards. So Renee is going to go and check the shopping list next.
What's on my shopping list?
You have butter, cheese, milk, and eggs on your list. Do you want to order them now?
Yes, please.
Great, your order has been confirmed.
So the idea there is that's how we would integrate with an Instacart or Amazon Fresh. It would place the order via those applications, and then by the time you come back home, it's ready to go.
What can I cook?
There's enough in your fridge to make Spanish flan, mashed potatoes, or spaghetti squash.
The key takeaway there is it says there's enough in your fridge, right? So it's taking account of what's in your fridge and then makes recipe suggestions based on that. So in the future, what we're looking to do is, for example, maybe you want to try to be vegan for a couple weeks or paleo, right? So it'll reorganize itself and pull recipes that'll fit that and fit what you have in your fridge.
Let's make Spanish flan.
Okay, let me preheat the oven to 350 degrees for you.
And again, that's another thing to pay attention to. It says, I'll preheat the oven for you, right? So you don't even have to worry about that. That's already taken care of for you. Later in the recipe, it'll go into like you putting it into the oven. So it'll set a timer for 60 minutes, and so that's another thing you don't have to worry about.
Awesome.
1/7, melt the sugar until it's liquefied, in a medium saucepan over medium-low heat, and golden in color.
How much sugar do I need?
1 cup of white sugar.
Yeah, so that's basically it. The core concept is there, so like it'll walk you through the recipe, and all the added features are what we just demoed for you there. So in the future, it'll order groceries, it'll work with your smart appliances, et cetera, et cetera. So next, we're going to have Akia break down some of the code for you. We used API.ai and Node.js, so he's going to give you a look at that.
So if you guys don't know what API.ai is, it is a service or a tool to help developers create chatbots. And it's a pretty simple tool. Actually, you can detect people's intent and then handle those intents and respond to those. So we had like many different intents, and there are there's a lot of things to think about when trying to design a voice user interface so that it seems natural. That's one of the challenges that we had. But here's our like examples of what we did of intents that we tried to capture, like the next instruction or previous instruction. Can you please repeat that? And how we capture those intents are like we give it a set of text that it can train and recognize. So here's like, what's next? All right, awesome, finish. So these are, depending on the current context as well, like it will detect what intent you're trying to ask for. All right. So, but where do we get the recipes that we ask for? Where do we get the ingredients that we ask for? So, because the response comes from here, but it can also come from a webhook. So this webhook, we connect to our API that are hosted by Google Cloud Functions. And from there, we have a bunch of functions that we can map to, that we have mapped to our API. So this is like view fridge, like it will list all the recipes, or all the, not recipes, but all the items in our inventory, and there's a view pantry, add to shopping list. So we have all these functions in the back end that will handle all of our intents. And there are many like different like challenges that we have come upon since it's our first time using API.ai, and as well as our first time using Google Cloud Functions. But it was a pretty nice ride, and it was very fun to learn. But Renee can talk to you about the challenges that we faced.
Yes. So, can I go back to the API AI? Awesome. So, one of the many challenges we faced while doing this, there was one point. Actually, this is the first time we ever use APIs.ai, the website. So for us, it was a new experience, just trying to experiment with Google's actions and like how they're able to really keyword like on words, and how we could actually use it, and how sensitive it is when it picks up a voice. And this was a great experience for us, and we got to learn a lot just by looking at what it offers. At the same time, the way Akia said, we had to implement what the user would say, and it comes down to the idea, how do you talk, right? When you're a human, you're talking to another person, you get to explain to them, and they're able to say, oh, okay, I get you, I know what you're saying, okay. It's like a communication back and forth. But with a robot, you're just telling it, hey, do this, and the robot would say, yes, no, I will do the action. So there are similar robots or bots out there that do the same thing. There are personal chefs that help you cook, but in our case, ours allows you to personalize it. It makes you feel like you're actually talking to somebody else. It responds to you, and it gives you feedback saying, okay, awesome, thank you, perfect. And when, if by some chance, in the program, it doesn't capture one of those words, like what does it do, right? And then we had that trial where like, hey, hello, how are you, this and that. And then what if someone said, sup? At that moment, it's like, freak out and cancel. So we had to pretty much had to learn how to talk and reprogram everything from the bottom up. So just basically trying to reprogram it to understand language. And that was one of the biggest challenges we faced there. Yeah. I'll pass it back to Michael.
Yeah, so that's basically it. So it was great experience being a part of VentureBeat and the conference. So there are some pictures there. We'll open the floor to questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you. Yeah.
Was there anything unexpected when you kind of designing the conversation flow?
Yeah.
Were there any unexpected things where you think, oh, someone would never ask that, but you had to plan for it?
Yeah, definitely. Do you guys want to?
Yeah, so the question was, what happened when somebody didn't say something that was on the list?
Or just like they asked something you never expected them to ask. How did you handle it?
All right, so that also brings me back to the point of like talking. One time I let someone try out the app, and I'm like, here, try this app. And he's all like, I want frijoles. It's like, we were thinking of just food that, it would be in the broadest area, and then frijoles came up, and we were like, I don't know if it handles Spanish. And then it ran through it, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know what that is. And it just crashed, and I was like, oh, okay. And then, it's just, there's also this training method on the API website where, you could go back to it and like you get to see what people said to it and say, okay, I want frijoles. I'm like, what do I do with this? I click on it and, it starts learning like, oh, okay, frijoles is a food. So now I'll assign this as food. And essentially, by the time, more people say, I want this or pizza, right away. You don't even know what it is. They just say pizza or calzones. And it's like, what? Okay, sure. And then it'll try to understand that it's food. And then it'll try to prioritize first what the item is and then try to continue from there. I also believe Akia wanted to say more about that. No? Okay.
In the future, do you guys plan on moving away from API.ai and maybe implementing your own natural language processing? Good question. So the question is, do you think in the future we'll be moving away from Google's API.ai into our own natural language processing or understanding? That's a tall order. I would like to play with it, but it's kind of like reinventing the wheel. There's already Google API.ai, Amazon's Alexa platform, and a couple other things. So I'm not too keen on it. Any of you guys? No? API.ai was a challenge of its own.
Yeah, like the project they had here, the AI bot that they made. Yeah, Kift. I think the question is like something similar to that. Danny was telling me that they struggled a lot to trying to understand what someone was saying. And like, I kind of don't want to face that. Like there's already like a platform that it's almost at a capturing level of a human voice. Like it understands everything it captures. So I would rather try to work with that and make something better rather than to like work with something that will have problems and then implement more stuff to it.
Have you guys tested this in a real kitchen yet? Those kitchens can get loud.
No, we haven't.
We have not. The question was, have we tested this in a real environment? The answer is no. On Google, so the question is follow up from the previous question, how can we reduce voice capture? Or just, yeah, so background noise. I believe on Google, Google Home and like all the Google devices, you're able to bring down the sensitivity on the settings. Not sure exactly how that works, but we did have fun messing with the Google Home that they lent to us. We set it up, and we would ask it, "Who am I?" And it would pick up our voice, like "You're Renee" or like "You're Michael," and like oh cool, that's actually cool. It actually captures who we are, but it also picked up any sensitive, like if someone else was talking, it would confuse both of our sentences and just combine into one long sentence.
Yeah, so in that regards, we have like fallback intents / actions. So if there's background noise or there's like he and I are talking and it picks both of that up, it'll fall back to something like, sorry, this is embarrassing, but could you repeat that? Or, hey, I didn't quite catch that, could you repeat it again? So rather than error, like, please repeat, it's more of a conversational aspect. So we try to handle that with fallback intentions and then go back and work on that in terms of testing and reallocating thresholds and things like that. So, yeah. Any other questions? No? Maybe? All right, Camille.
So I use my phone to cook with a lot.
Yeah.
Various timers for things. Does Marvin have a way where you can do that easily? Like, will he also keep track of times and things?
Yeah. So what we're hoping to do is scrape through the recipe. Oh yeah, sorry. The question was, so she sets timers on her phone, and does Marvin, our application, take care of that for her, right? So yeah, essentially. So throughout the recipe, we'll be scraping for information, and so if there's like a minute indication or like like a time, a number associated with minute or hour or something like that, it'll set a timer for that. Automatically, and it'll confirm with you. So like it'll say, all right, I set a timer for 60 minutes. So then you don't have to worry about that. So that's a simple implementation via like Node.js, like one of the libraries there. But yeah.
Yeah, I was also looking into that, and there's a small tutorial that I found. I believe it is a pre-built into JavaScript where like it's a set timeout. And just all we did, I'm trying to implement that. All I'm trying to do there is every single action, in the instruction that we have, it either has a nil or a time frame. So it's just an easy conversion of like set timeout for whatever, if it's true or not, and it would start the timer right away. So it would sleep Marvin until the timer's up and say, hey, do this. And one cool thing that Michael brought up was like, what happened if you don't have smart machines, or like what if your oven is really old? Like what can you do then? I'm like, oh, how about if we try to teach it, like when it's cooking something and it overcooks it, be like, oh, we burned it. It's like, sorry. And next time, like, okay, at least we know that your food cooks at a shorter rate. So it will try to memorize, the time frame it took to actually cook the item. But yeah. Any further questions? Thank you.
That's all for this week. I got it. That's all for this week. Thank you for coming to Moonlight. Next week, the other group from the Mobile Beat, it's presenting as, I believe, the never-ending story conversational agent, right? It's a storytelling. A storytelling AI. My bad. That'd be the never-ending one. That'd be a good one for the stupid shit hackathon. So that'd be really cool. So please come out for that, as well as if anyone ever wants to present, just find me on Slack or talk to me about presenting, and I can get you scheduled for that. All right, thank you.